Hello everybody, I hope you can hear me. My name's Emma Cayley. I'm the head of the School of Languages, Cultures and Societies, and this evening you are extraordinarily lucky to get two talks for the price of one. Well, I hope no one's actually paid, although I'm sure you would pay to listen to these wonderful colleagues. It's a mark of how many talented individuals we have in the school. So many talented individuals who recently achieved promotion that we're having to double up Inaugural. So thank you very much to both of you. It's both my great honour and my great delight to be able to introduce two exceptional colleagues working here in the School of Languages, Cultures and Societies, Professor Clare Wright and Professor Rasha Soliman. Both will give their responses to the topic you can see up there, unexpected journeys, challenging conventions, and I will introduce Professor Soliman after Professor Wright has given her talk. So first to introduce our colleague, Professor Clare Wright, who is Professor of Linguistics and Language Teaching at the University of Leeds and joined the university in 2016. She has an MA in History from Pembroke College, Cambridge, and more relevantly, an MA and PhD in Linguistics and Second Language Acquisition from Newcastle University. She's always had a strong interest in how languages work, as she tells me, partly because of her grandfather's ability to speak at least 6 languages after joining the Foreign Office. And Clare was further inspired by a year living in Holland when she was 7, going to a Dutch school. And she promises that if you find her in relaxed enough frame of mind, she can still recite her Dutch brownie promise or sing you a Dutch carol about Santa Claus or Sinterklaas. Sinterklaas. Yep. And this breadth of experience of real language learning outside the classroom, among other life's twists and turns, has informed how she sees her research now. As you will hear more in her lecture, Clare takes an unusually interconnected transdisciplinary approach to investigating how linguistic, cognitive and intercultural factors impact on the student experience in globalised higher education. As well as interest in formal areas of linguistics, like how we learn particular grammar rules, she's keen to understand how to build effective multilingual communication skills, as many of our students coming into Leeds or going out from Leeds during residence abroad want to develop to ensure that language learning is relevant to the real world. Her current research includes working with colleagues in Finland and China, developing a new model for developing interactional fluency in different settings, including in online or digitally mediated conversations. She also works on training on digital literacy, critical thinking and ethical Gen AI in academic contexts. She's currently editor-in-chief of the Journal of the European Second Language Association, the largest scientific association in Europe in its field, and was association president from 2019 to 2023. She also, this is a very long list, she also co-founded the Bilingual International Journal of Chinese Language Teaching in 2019 and is founding chair of the Residence Abroad Network and Transnational Mobility in Student Education Network. She was recently awarded a 3-year fellowship funding from the university's Institute for Teaching Excellence for the Stepping Up, Standing Out project on improving international student experiences, and is a University Teaching Award winner for her work with colleagues on developing training in generative AI literacies. Recent publications include a monograph on second language fluency with Cambridge University Press, which, despite being scraped unethically from the internet for AI training purposes, still seems to give her a few pounds a year in royalties, for which she is grateful. In the school, Clare is an extremely proactive and dynamic Director of Postgraduate Taught Education, a role to which she has brought innovation and care over the last few years, for which we and all our students are hugely grateful. Outside academia, when she isn't over in France, keeping up her French while restoring an old farmhouse near Calais, she loves keeping up her Duolingo Chinese streak, now on 100 days. Fantastic. And she is delighted to spend time with her new American grandson, especially whenever he can visit the UK, and helping him develop his bi-dialectal skills in mastering a good Yorkshire accent, which we perhaps might hear later on. We will do. Claire.
Thank you so much, Emma. And it is a tremendous honour to be here today, standing in front of so many wonderful colleagues and friends and family who have travelled from all over the world and many parts of the UK to be here today. And welcome to all of you joining online. When I had the chance to share this inaugural with my dear colleague Rasha, we realised that there were so many angles around language learning and language teaching that we shared and have always shared since we found each other in joining Leeds. It seemed like a good opportunity to do a combined slot. So thank you to the school and to the university for making it happen. Like all good lectures, I will give you the outline of what I'm going to say. And I'm probably going to diverge horribly from that, but I am under strict rules of time, so I will try not to go on too long, and I will try not to be too unexpected in the journeys that I will take today. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about how I came to become an academic, although it seems not strange to some. It was never planned, and a career, a life that has seen at least 6 career turns, many more to come perhaps. I just wanted to sort of give the story a little bit on how you can never know where you're going to end up, but you end up in good places. I think I've ended up in the best place possible by being someone who's always curious, always thinking about criticality, and where I can challenge expectations if I don't think that they're being critical enough. But by doing so, I've been able to foster so many wonderful collaborations. I'm going to say a bit more about those today. And then I'm just going to finish with a few words about what I'm doing here at Leeds and what I hope to carry on doing here at Leeds in years to come around this idea of L2 fluency, which is my main research area, but also about how people experience that context of being international, and how the ubiquitous technology that we face and have had access to for years, but what is changing now, what we might be thinking about that in an era of the rise of generative AI, which sometimes feels rather like a perfect storm. So for those of you who do know me well and perhaps have known my family going back a long way, you'll think, so what's unexpected? Cambridge graduate, as you heard already, white, female, obsessed with spelling and dictionaries. This was my favourite present when I was 10 years old, double long version of the Oxford English Dictionary. And the 5th generation of professors and educators, the daughter of Robin Conway, a pioneering radio astronomer who helped build Jodrell Bank over there in Cheshire when he was at Manchester University, and the even prouder granddaughter of Elsie Conway, the first female professor of botany, first at Durham and then at Glasgow University. I even spent the final year of my undergraduate degree in history writing about the future of the university in post-colonial Africa, when, as the founding president of Ghana, after it became independent, Nkrumah said, "The ivory tower concept of the university is dead. May it rest in peace." Well, let's see where that has taken us all. But it wasn't inevitable that I should go into academia at all. I wanted to feel at that time, after having graduated, that I wanted to get involved in more direct change, and looking around in those late 80s, early 90s, trying to do a bit more challenging of the conventions. But like all unexpected journeys for a linguist, it started with something linguistic. And for me, it all started with a typo. Do you remember The Guardian back in the day, the brawny ad, famous for not being able to ever print anything? I saw this advert for the right on, Paddy Ashdown, wanting a copy typist. I was all expecting to go and work for the Quakers or UNESCO, or go and do something very grand in Geneva for the United Nations, but this seemed too fun an opportunity to pass up, and a good chance to use that typing course that I'd done just in case, a couple of years earlier, and which I was using when I was working for Scope, a mental charity in London at the time. So I turned up working for Paddy, who didn't seem to mind that I had no office management skills at all and wasn't even very fast at typing at the time. But after 4 very, very exciting years working right at the heart of the Houses of Parliament, I then decided it was time for more changes. And indeed, the next 4 years saw 3 career changes. Having met my Mr. Wright, we decided that leaving London was a good idea. He persuaded me that being an MP would definitely not be a good thing. So instead, I went to work for a business development and training council doing advice for small businesses in East Yorkshire. There's sunny Bridlington Beach, where our son was born, in East Yorkshire. And we then started to remember that possibly looking a bit more international might be interesting. And Andrew was up for a potential job in Shanghai before it built all those wonderful buildings here. And I started to fantasize about the children learning to play little tiny violins and being fluent in Mandarin. But that kind of wasn't to be for various reasons. And so I retrained as an English language teacher and started working in London. When what really got my attention was why my learners weren't learning what I was teaching. I didn't think I was too bad a teacher. Why was 6 pages on the rules of the English article in Raymond Murphy's English Grammar in Use so difficult? I could understand it, but why were my learners struggling? And why were other kinds of grammar seemingly difficult, no matter how much time and effort you paid? So I then also was listening to my younger child, my daughter, growing up, and realizing that she was doing something similar with her verbs to what my Chinese learners were doing with their verbs, to what my Arabic and Brazilian learners were doing with their verbs. And so I thought, maybe it isn't just about the teacher. Maybe there's something going on more kind of underneath in our mind and in how we process language. And so that's what really got me interested in taking this further. When we had another career change, we moved out of London, we moved up to Durham. I had the great chance of meeting Melinda Wong. Some of you will know her well from here, where she was then running the EAP, or English for Academic Purposes Centre in Durham. And I turned up and said, I'd like to teach English to your international students. And she said, do you have an MA? I said, yes, in medieval and modern history. She said, could you think of something a little more relevant? So I then joined the very first cohort of people doing the MA in Linguistics and Language Acquisition with Martha Young-Sholton at Newcastle University up the road. And that's where I found my home, because I realized that through the ideas of formal linguists such as Chomsky and others, that there is indeed a system in the mind for figuring out how to acquire language. What teachers could do with that then would make, hopefully, the learning more effective. I'm not going to say an awful lot more about that, because that is very much what Rasha will say much more interestingly when she comes to her talk. But I just wanted to reflect on how much I was able to learn through that time in Newcastle, through some luminaries in the SLA field, such as Viv Cook on the left there, and then Florence Miles, another very important inspiration to my own work, thinking about how to make language learning well informed by linguistic ideas, but always relevant and always authentic in terms of language use. So for a while, we looked all set to stick around in the Northeast, and our children were growing up with wonderful Northern accents. But then another chance arose to help found the Centre for Literacy and Multilingualism at Reading. And I had the wonderful chance to work there with my colleague Claire Furno, who I'm delighted to know is in the room with me, and Parvane Tavakoli, who I know is online. And these two, amongst the other colleagues in applied linguistics at Reading, helped make some very, very inspiring years go with a real swing. During that time, I also was invited to lunch one day to meet some visiting international colleagues. It'll only take an hour of your time. It would be really wonderful if you wouldn't mind joining us. I said, okay, well, that's fine. Where are they from? China? Okay, that's fine. And there I met my colleague, Professor Wang Jun from Shanghai Jiao Tong University. And over lunch, completely unexpectedly, again, we found so much in common in our ideas about learning language and our ideas about how to make that relevant for fluent communication. I'd always had this sort of side interest in Chinese, way back from working with Paddy, who amongst his various life turns while working as a spy, a diplomat, had to learn Cantonese while working out in Hong Kong. And he had many funny stories to tell about how tones could get him into terrible trouble while he was trying to be polite at the dinner table. And so during my time at Newcastle, when I'd been really studying mainly on Chinese learners of English, I again had a chat just by chance one day in the common room making a cup of tea with a colleague who taught Chinese. And I said, well, I know about what happens for Chinese students coming to study in the UK. Do we know anything about our English students who go out to study China and what happens during their residence abroad in China? And she said, do you know, no one's ever researched it. Oh, I sense a research gap coming on. And so a lot of the theoretical ideas that I've developed around language learning, around formal acquisition of different kinds of grammar and so on, I then, through teaching English, I then flipped and tried to work out how many of them might be relevant when it came to learning Chinese. And Jun Wang has been a very important colleague to me ever since. So I thought we were all set to stay at Reading. I thought that would be great for family. You've heard we have a little house in France. Our family all live down south. But then my son started studying history at Leeds. And he kept going on about how wonderful it was. And then my husband got a job in Huddersfield and kept saying how wonderful Leeds was. And I thought, do you know, I just can't keep going on with the commute. I was really sorry to leave Claire and Pavane and the other colleagues, but I then had a wonderful opportunity to come and join Leeds. I don't need to tell you all how wonderful working at Leeds is and what is just so great about the opportunities for a second language acquisitionist like myself to be here. First of all, in the School of Languages, Cultures and Societies offers the biggest range of languages, I think that's true to say, in the UK, including Chinese, which my cousin had studied 40 years previously. So I knew Leeds was great for Chinese. But amongst other benefits of coming here, we're finding others such as Rasha and others here with a very similar vision of how formal ideas around linguistics can link into language teaching, language learning in a more communicative, more authentic, more real world way. And as I say, I'm looking forward to hearing what Rasha will say about that in relation to Arabic. But with my interest in global languages beyond English, thinking about French, thinking about Chinese, as I said already, and having the chance to expand that into other languages like Russian, Leeds is just such a great place to do that. One of the reasons why it is such an amazing place to find people to collaborate with and to foster this interdisciplinary approach to research and to then have the capacity to apply scientific research insights for real world benefits is the network of language at Leeds, which Cecile was influential in drawing me to when I joined Leeds here, and means that colleagues from the School of Education, colleagues in the School of Psychology, schools all around the university. Those of us here who are interested in language, we all work together and find common ideas. And one of the things that Leeds was particularly inspiring, I think, was ensuring that people who feel passionate about their research can go out there to take it to people in the real world. And we have a regular Be Curious festival, building impact for talking about our research in ways that we hope will be of relevance and of interest to people who have no idea sometimes about the long words that we can use when we're talking to each other. And that was where I think our first Be Curious that I worked with Rasha, colleagues Peng Ying from Chinese and others around the school, where we were able to have fun days teaching people Arabic script, Russian script, Chinese tones and others.
So Leeds has been a really great place for me to take my own research forward, which I'll say a bit more about in a moment, but it's also been a really great place to foster collaborations and for feeling very, very connected. And for me, I feel really passionate about the way that universities obviously can allow people individual niches to develop their focus and their depth. And I'm really keen to talk to people about finer points of Chinese character learning if you really want. But I think what it enables us to do as a group is try and ensure that our leading global research on language work can spread around. And what I've been trying to do in what I do is turn that research into thinking about how people can communicate effectively, and particularly during residence abroad. You heard already that I was president of the European Second Language Association there, and currently journal editor of the journal of that association, founding a residence abroad network which brings together people who help organise the year abroad, but then also do research on the year abroad, both in the UK with the Residence Abroad Network and with colleagues across Europe in the Transnational Mobility and Education Network. So there are two real areas of research that I'm going to highlight, and it will be a brief skip through these. But first of all is trying to take that interest in language that I said earlier about what's going on in our mind as we are learning a second language, or the L2 mind, if you like, which is how do we come to know this language knowledge, and then how can we use what we know more fluently. I've been working on how our different kinds of memory work, how what we see, particularly with Chinese, through things like character knowledge, and how that connects into what we can then produce, particularly what happens when we do that in the real communication world of residence abroad, or RA. I look specifically at the connection between the kind of procedural memory, a kind of long-term memory that we use when we're doing things that are automatic, we don't think about consciously, or declarative memory, which is where we put our knowledge that we study hard. Using that kind of combined memory system, I've been working with Parvati Tavakoli and some of our work that we put in our book there on second language speech fluency from research to practice, in trying to figure out just exactly what are the processes that a speaker has to go through when they think of something like bread. And then they want to say it in French. And so they have to decide what kind of bread. Are they going to talk about a general pain? Are they going to talk about a specific baguette? And how we go from the concept through to formulating that with different levels of grammatical and phonological information, so that we can formulate the grammatical and appropriate word and phrase, and how we can then articulate it with all our tongue and our lips and our articulatory systems in place to be able to say in a pronounced form, le pain or la baguette. But just learning how a speaker can produce a word doesn't really help us if we're trying to think about communication. So I've been working with Pauliina Peltonen in Finland there on this model of interactional fluency or discourse fluency, where we're trying to think of the multiple levels of fluency that we use when we're talking with other people. I talked a little bit about my work on Chinese characters, and this was a study where I was able to use our eye tracker down here in our basement, along with the eye tracker out in Shanghai Jiao Tong University with Wang Jun, where we presented beginner learners with characters that look a bit like this. We gave them the character, we gave them the English word, without any other kinds of information. We just tried to see what kind of patterns they might pick up and what they noticed. I don't know if you're noticing anything about those characters, which you think might be the easiest to learn. As it happened, the two on the left for go and for mao, where the left-hand side signals noun, and it means dog or here, or dog or cat. Somehow our learners were able to pick up nouns quicker than any other kind of characters for the different words that we have. It's been known for a while that many babies in many languages have a preference for learning nouns. My research has been able to confirm that we seem to have this for second language learners of Mandarin as well. And to my knowledge, it's the only study of its kind. So I've been interested in what digital technology can do for language learning. And of course, that brings us into many ways in which we use technology, in which we work every day in universities. and how students who are coming into universities can thrive, can succeed in their daily lives and their ways that they communicate. So internationalisation is the big buzzword, where we want to encourage our campuses to be global places where everyone can enjoy meeting people from all sorts of cultures and are open to understanding about the differences and the similarities between different backgrounds for communicating. But we can see from the 3-year project that was mentioned earlier that I worked on with Alison, my colleague here, and I, just how much more inclusive we can be when we are looking at a room of students from all sorts of different backgrounds, and what we're going to try and do in the future to try and foster that kind of inclusivity through the Standing Out project that we ran. One of the ways that we're trying to help people feel included and thrive is understand how they communicate with each other using digital tools. I've been working with Zoe Handley in York on using an I Speak app there, where we are tracking people on an hourly basis or a daily basis to find out what kind of conversations they're having. And this has given us huge insights into, first of all, how rich some communication styles can be, but also how limited many of our students can find communicating in that second language, English, for example, if they are visiting UK, where they may really, really want to have more opportunities to develop their practice and develop their fluency, but they're really struggling to get out of their room and have conversations with anyone. So that's something that we're taking forward, and how we can try and use even written conversations online as a stepping stone to building up more confidence and more opportunities for speaking face to face. I've also worked on how to access teaching through massive open online courses, or MOOCs there. And there's been one that we developed at Reading on academic writing that I worked on with Claire. But we also set up one here at Leeds on critical thinking. And this has been a real passion of mine for many, many years. And with a student of mine, Jiayu Chao, we figured out what some responses were in people who'd been taking part in this particular MOOC on training in critical thinking. And we've devised this model to show the connection between curiosity and criticality, on curiosity and in confidence in thinking critically. The more curious you are, the better you can handle managing academic work, for example. The more confident you are at that, the more curious you get, the more confident you get, and so on. And I'm delighted that the student who I did that work with has gone on to win one of the most prestigious awards possible in China, of a National Teaching Award. And then finally, to speak a bit about the project I worked on with Kashmir and others, for which I was honoured with a University Teaching Fellow for our collaborative work together with Kashmir and with Manoj Ravi over in engineering and others, where we are trying to understand what people mean when they talk about generative AI, what they are afraid of, what they are enthusiastic about, and how we can train people well by understanding what people need to think about in a more varied way, but what the common core of important values are in terms of understanding what is going to be ethical in the way we think about developing generative AI use and generative AI literacy training. So we've created this framework as part of our project, which we called Building AI-Based Educational Languages, hence Babel. We are now working with university trainers in bringing forward this framework to try and embed generative AI literacy and real ethical and equitable awareness of Gen AI into all that we do. But generative AI, every time I mention it, most of my colleagues' shoulders sag. It does feel that higher education institutions, universities, are facing rather a perfect storm. And arts and humanities in this field in particular do seem to be rather in decline, as artistically portrayed in a recent paper by the Times Higher Education paper. Do we think that generative AI is taking over? Do we think we're going to see artificial super intelligence getting rid of all of us sometime soon? Well, whatever happens, I think it's fair to say that humans will continue to matter and that communicating effectively will continue to matter. So I think it's all the more important to keep communicating as humans to humans at the heart of what I will be doing and what I hope is at the heart of what we will do at this institution, amongst others. I think it's really important to keep embracing the unexpected. Look at those 6 career turns that I've had. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't done all of those different stages. But by thinking critically all the way through, reflecting on why we do things, I think that will help us surmount the challenges that sometimes the unexpected can throw at you. Because if we keep communicating, then we find our connections. And I'm a great believer in Ian Foster's comment there from Howard's End. What we need to do, only connect. So thank you to all of you who are connected to me, who are here online, who are here in the room, particularly friends and family who have got me here. You've known me all my life, and I wouldn't be here without you. I would be going on like an Austin speech far too long, and I think I'm already slightly over time. So I will stop there just by saying thank you, all of you, for being here, and thank you for all the inspiring collaborators, especially Rasha, who I know will help lead Leeds forward in the years to come. And now that's enough from me, and over to Rasha. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Claire, for that really wonderful and inspiring speech. And without further ado, we are moving on to Rasha Soliman, who is Professor of Arabic Pedagogy and Linguistics and is one of the deputy heads of the school here in Leeds. Rasha was born in Cairo, but spent her childhood in Saudi Arabia, where she was exposed early on to cultural and linguistic diversity. Although she enjoyed many subjects in school, I'm sure you're a very good student, especially maths, physics, and Arabic grammar, she was quite certain she never wanted to be a doctor, a teacher, and most definitely not an academic. Life, as it turned out, had other ideas. At the age of 16, she returned to Cairo to do a joint honours BA in tourism management and modern languages, English and German. In 1995, she trained as a teacher of Arabic as a second language at the International Language Institute, where expert mentors sparked in her a lasting passion for language pedagogy. She later completed postgraduate studies in second language teaching and an MA in applied linguistics from the University of Southern Queensland in Australia. Rasha moved to the UK in 2004 before taking her first higher education role at the University of Manchester and then beginning her long association, I won't labour the long association with Leeds. Between 2007 and 2014, she completed her PhD in Arabic Applied Linguistics here in the school in LCS, where she later became a teaching fellow in 2015. Since then, Rasha has made many contributions to Arabic language education in Leeds and beyond. Her research focuses on language variation in the Arabic classroom, teacher training, approaches to grammar teaching, Arabic in UK schools, and the application of the Sefer to Arabic. She founded the first Arabic Teachers Council in the UK, moderates the global Arabic L, I'm saying that correctly, Arabic L academic mailing list, and has delivered keynote addresses at national and international events, including UNESCO's World Arabic Language Day in 2022. Her work has been recognised with several awards, including the University of Leeds Women of Achievement Award in 2021 for her contributions to Arabic teaching and her leadership role in equality, diversity and inclusion. In 2024, Rasha was promoted to chair, hurrah, a milestone that, as far as I'm aware, makes her the first female Muslim professor of Arabic language pedagogy in the UK, a huge achievement to accompany all her other many achievements. And on a personal note, as deputy head in the school, Rasha works phenomenally hard to make colleagues' lives, including my own, much easier. Professor Rasha, shukran habibti.
Can you hear me okay? No. Yeah? Maybe I just need to speak louder. It's always my problem. You can ask my students. That was unexpected, but really, really beautiful. And I would like to say that it was very difficult to prepare for this lecture. And I kept asking myself, like, why? I have spoken a lot in conferences. And as a teacher, you get used to be in front of the audience, but this one was particularly hard. And I was reflecting on this and thinking it's a once in a lifetime thing. When did I ever have friends, colleagues, family, students online and in person all together in one place? I don't think it ever happened before. So I'm so grateful to all of you for finding the time to all be with us today, and really grateful to Emma for your kind words. Grateful to Claire for joining me. Where is Claire? Oh, you're here. For joining me in this. It makes it easier a little bit that we're together. Okay, let's start. I would like to say that I'm dedicating this lecture to my parents, who have supported me in so many ways that are very difficult to describe. My father is here today with us, I think first time in Michael Sandler building and in this theater. But my mother sadly passed away last year after a very brave battle with cancer. But both of them inspired me so much, supported me so much, and sometimes they were too ambitious for me. Because I remember my mom saying this to me once when I was a teenager, saying, اللي معاهم جائزة نوبل مش أحسن منك في حاجة. Those with a Nobel Prize are no better than you. I don't have a Nobel Prize, and I'm not expecting to have one, but I hope I'm making them proud enough. Okay, so I do have aims for this lecture. There's an outline here. I have aims I would like to share with you, and I will need to tell you a little bit about myself, and I will tell you a little bit about Arabic language. And then I will tell you about my unexpected journey as well. Just like Claire, I had an unplanned journey that joined research, student education, and leadership roles. And hopefully we'll finish with a list of thanks at the end. Okay, so aims. My main aim today is to take this opportunity to advocate for what I call a variationist approach to language teaching. An approach that can be controversial, that upsets people, it upsets colleagues and some friends. But the more I apply it, the more I believe in it. And I'm glad I'm not the only one, by the way. But I have another aim, which is to try and maybe help to diversify the perception of what professorship is about and what it looks like. The one thing I try to do to be a professor is to actually write and the script for my lecture and printing it. And I keep looking at it, but I'm not reading it because I struggle with that. So I'm going to keep it on the side until I really need it. The reason I said this is because soon after I was promoted to chair, I was in a conference, not in Leeds, somewhere else. And after my presentation, a professor came to me and said, thank you very much for your talk. I really enjoyed it and I get your points and I agree with them. But I'm not sure that everyone will take what you said seriously. You just look so cute to be a professor. You don't look or sound like one. And I was smiling and I'm still trying to think if I should see this as a compliment. But yeah, I see Helen there like, no. Well, I don't mind looking cute, that's fine. But I want people to take what I say seriously because that's very important for me. So as you do, I went online and tried to look for ways to make you look more like a professor and sound like a professor. And there were suggestions, but they would require some significant cosmetic interventions. I didn't really want to go through I thought, okay, well, this is not really working. I don't think I will look like those professors, but maybe by standing here today, I'm actually hopefully helping in bringing a different picture or a voice of what a professor is about, can look like or sound like. And I'm saying that a professor could be a woman, could be someone with caring responsibilities, who happen to be from a minority ethnic background, being an Arab and a Muslim, choosing to wear hijab. English is not my first language, and I'm actually wholeheartedly a language educator. I've never had a research contract. I've never had a period of research leave. I am a language educator who has a lot of passion for what I'm doing, and it's only because of the support of people around me in this place that I have achieved what I achieved, and I became a professor. I'm not saying that Leeds is perfect. There are still a lot more to do, but I think in Leeds we are doing a very good job to help many colleagues to thrive and to flourish and to make use of what they're doing, all the things that they are passionate about. And I wrote a script to try to be more like a professor, but I'm not managing that very well. Okay, so what do I mean by a variationist approach to language teaching? I mean an approach that raises learners' awareness of the linguistic and cultural diversity that a language has. An approach that develops their recognition and communication across multilingual and multidialectal contexts. An approach that exposes students to how the language, with all its different varieties, dialects, accents, registers, are actually used in real and online worlds. An approach that prepares students for different career journeys that they may take. An approach that's not limited to the mastery of one standard form, but rather it gives the students the choice to draw on other varieties and move between them depending on the context. It's also an approach that connects with the identity and the heritage of some of our students. In the case of Arabic language, which I will speak about a lot today, it's the students from Arab backgrounds, like my little boys here, they're not little anymore, but my boys here, to capitalize on this asset of what they already know. It's an approach that invites critical engagement with the ideas of what is correct, what is grammatical, what is pure, what is more prestigious to say, ideas that the students will hear outside class. And hopefully an approach that equips students with some linguistic tools to analyze similarities and differences between the varieties that they hear. Okay, so I hope that you would agree with me that everything I put here is in line with our student education agenda in the university, or higher education in general. But I would like just to also highlight here that I'm not saying that we teach 20 plus varieties of a language at the same time in isolation. And it's not something to add complexity or to confuse students, but it's an approach that challenges the conventional way of teaching. And definitely when it comes to Arabic, that is the case. And as I said earlier, I did upset people because, well, I'll tell you more about Arabic and then you will know why. Okay, so I get always asked, okay, all of this sounds great, but what do you really mean? Yeah, in class, in practice, what is that all about? So I'll give you some examples from my own classes from beginners level. Here is one slide where we teach the Arabic letters and I focus on one letter. And I tell students, by the way, the sound of that letter may be different depending on who the speaker is. So you need to be aware that you will hear it in these different ways. When we look at similarities and differences, I present to students the varieties, not to ask them to learn every different variety or everything here, but to just observe when there are similarities and differences and how. I'm sure that all of you here, even if you don't speak any Arabic, if you look at this, you'll be able to tell that there are more similarities than differences. And giving them the choice. That's another thing that I like to do sometimes. Getting students, this was from one of my classes, and I'm grateful that the students who allowed me to take the picture. They all agreed, by the way. And they were doing a speaking practice, describing a room, and they had different choices on the board, and they were just free to choose to say whatever they wanted, which meant that they needed to hear each other and understand each other saying different things. They were totally aware as well of the context of using each of these. So that is what I would like to advocate for. Now, student feedback, okay, maybe that's what I think, but it's very important to also make sure that this is something they're finding useful. I'm not going to read these out loud, but it's from the module evaluation surveys. In fact, if there was a negative comment, I would say that I'm not doing enough of it. They said we need to do more. Any students here? Yeah, we need to do more. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about Arabic language now, so that you understand where the challenge is. Because if you agree that this approach is fine, then what is the big deal? What is it that you're really struggling with? So Arabic, as you know, is very old, and it has always had geographical variation. Even in pre-Islamic times, the way people spoke Arabic in different parts of the Arabian Peninsula and now in all these Arab countries has always been different, which meant the language is diglossic. And I'll give you the definition of this word in a minute. But also that region went through a period of colonialism. And all of these things had an impact, not just on the language, but on perceptions of the language. Okay, so what is diglossia? What do we mean that Arabic is diglossic? This is one of the, I would say, the most well-known and also most debated definition of what diglossia is. It's by Charles Ferguson, and that was back in 1959, when he described Arabic and few other languages to be diglossic, meaning you have two main varieties. The standard one, seen in a certain way, it's not the day-to-day language that people use, but it has more prestige. And you have the different spoken dialects across the Arab world, not as prestigious as perceived by its speakers, but they have a different context to use. Are they similar or different? They have more similarities than differences. Yes, you can easily say they're all Arabic, they're not different languages. But each one of them has a different context to use. Okay, so what did that region go through then during the colonial periods in terms of the language policies that happened at the time? There was an imposition of European languages to be the language of administration, education, and of course, modernity. And that was the case in some Arab countries, not all of them. When I say European languages, I refer mainly to English, French, and some Italian. They spread across that region. European vocabulary started to infiltrate the Arabic dialects more than the standard. Of course, that was expected because that is the day-to-day language that we use. So all those European words started to become part of the dialects until now we use them. This deepened this diglossia, the whole situation, making some kind of a linguistic hierarchy with the European languages being seen as the face of modernity. And then comes the standard Arabic. Sometimes we refer to it as modern standard Arabic, classical Arabic, doesn't really matter. It is that standard Arabic being grammatical and pure. And then comes the spoken dialects, some kind of perceived like degraded, impure vernaculars. At the same time, academics, as they do in the West, became very interested in Arabic as an object of study. And they started creating dictionaries and phrase books for the various dialects that they have seen or heard spoken in those countries. Now I want you to remember this last one, because phrase books, dictionaries, or proper description, linguistic description of the dialects didn't really exist that much before the Western academics started creating those. Okay, so there is some kind of a connotation here, if you're getting what I'm saying. During the colonial time and just after colonialism, there was some kind of a linguistic war in many of the Arab nations. There were religious-based historical nostalgia calling for the resurrection of the old classical Arabic to be the language of the Arab nations. And at the same time, there were some other pan-Arab nationalistic voices calling for a modernized version of that classical Arabic, calling it modern standard Arabic, and to be the language that unifies all those Arabs. But interestingly, there were some regionalists calling for the consolidation of the dialect as the real face of the local identities and cultures. It's also interesting to say that many of the songs and the poems that were written in those days against colonialism, they were in the dialects. Yeah. Those who had this interest in consolidating dialects, sometimes they had the idea of doing this at the expense of the standard variety. And there were some voices saying, well, we need English, actually. Who needs Arabic? We need English because English will be the language for our development as Arab nations. It is a language of science and business and internationalization. So all of these things were happening at the same time. And they had a big impact, not just at the academic level, but at the level of every Arabic speaker. Because people started to have emotions whenever you mention the word Arabic. Which Arabic? Why Arabic? Yeah. Okay, so history led to the following. We have this standard form, although it is not anyone's mother tongue and it's not used for the day-to-day communication, it is the official language of the Arab nations. And of course, because of that, it has more prestige. It is the one that unifies the Arabs. It's a language of education, literature, it's a language of textbooks, and it has always been well described and prescribed in linguistic books. And I'm talking here about hundreds and hundreds of years. You'll find books that were written to describe all the grammar and the pronunciation of the standard language in details, written by amazing academics and scholars in the past. So it has that feeling about it. And it's connected to religion. And religion can be one of the most important things for many people. At the same time, the dialects, yes, they are the mother tongues of Arabic speakers. They are used in the day-to-day communication in most communicative contexts, online now and in real life tasks as well. However, they're not official. They have less prestige. They are never taught to their speakers. We don't know, we don't understand, we don't know about our own grammar. We speak the dialects, but we don't learn about it formally. And as far as I know, none of the Arabic countries have anything to do with the dialects in the formal education. Some people see the dialects as dividing, so not unifying like the standard. It's dividing because they're all different from each other. And they're quite famous to be picked up. Throughout history, we're talking about 1,000 and more years, travelers and traders used to pick up the spoken dialects while meeting people in the streets because they had no books to go to. And finally, there's some kind of a connotation here. It can be linked to colonialization, as some people see it. So that is a complex situation. And before I go to the learners, I hope now you're getting what I said at the beginning about people getting upset when sometimes you mention the word dialect. Yeah, there could be worries about the sustainability of Arabic, or it's about bringing us all together, or about religion. there are threats that people can be worried about. Okay, so what does all of this mean to the learners? I am a teacher of Arabic as a second language. I'm not a historian, and maybe I need my water. So, I'm not a historian. I'm not from social science background. I'm a linguist and a language educator. And what really matters for me is the students, the learners of Arabic, and how can we support them? Now, interestingly, it was Charles Ferguson, the same person who wrote that big definition about diglossia. He, in 1963, he wrote another paper that was a few years after, and I want you to look at the part here in the middle that says it would seem that any responsible course of Arabic instruction at the college or university level should offer sufficient information on the nature and the range of dialect variation. Yeah, so I'm not the first one, and I'm not the only one. And I find it really interesting. Oops, it should be he. How he used the word he, the pronoun he, to refer to all the learners of Arabic. So sorry to the female students, but it was in those days, maybe. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about myself now and how I got into this, because as Emma said, I never wanted to be an academic and never wanted to be a teacher, but it just happened. I grew up in Mecca, in Saudi Arabia. It is a city full of diversity. It is seen as the birthplace of Islam. It's visited by millions of people every year throughout history. So for me as a child, we used to go to the Holy Mosque every week. Hearing languages around us was just normal. Yeah, it was just part of everyday life. It was not something strange. And I think we were very lucky, privileged to have that experience, because in those days, before the internet and globalization, it was not easy to face the diversity, linguistic diversity. But in addition to the place itself, in my schools, I went to state schools, and in every classroom I went to, I had classmates who spoke different dialects of Arabic. So they were always friends from Syria, Jordan, Sudan. I had classmates from Palestine, from Yemen, Saudi, of course, and Egyptians. Yeah, in every classroom, we heard each other talking in our dialects, and that was, again, normal. A lot of diversity, but zero knowledge about it. We didn't learn anything about this diversity. And the way I see it is like looking at those beautiful seashells. They are similar, different, yeah? They're all beautiful, but you can see the different patterns there. You might have a preference for one of them over the other, yeah? But you don't know much about them. You don't pay attention to them because you only learn about this one. Yeah, there's only one that you have in your textbook, only one to practice. There's only one form that is correct, and one form that is beautiful and rich, one that is sacred and loved, and one form to rule them all. Lord of the Rings. That's a bit of clarification, because I often get misunderstood when I speak like this. I get misunderstood that I'm trying to give more importance to one variety over the others. No, I'm not saying that. I grew up in Saudi. I had very strict education when it comes to the standard Arabic. I loved it. I loved grammar. And I just want to say that they're all important. They're all equally important, especially when it comes to education, especially when it comes to our students. Okay, when did the journey really start? Although I loved grammar, I enjoyed these subjects. It really started when, after I finished my degree, I was trained at this International Language Institute in Cairo. I did an intensive course to teach Arabic language communicatively to mostly expats living in Cairo. We also had some students coming from abroad, like from here, going to study some Arabic in Egypt. The course was really brilliant. And when I was offered the job, I thought I'll be teaching that one. Yeah, the one that I know, the one I studied. I know the grammar very well. Sorry. But I was told I was going to teach that one, Egyptian Arabic. And they told me because that is the language that our customers, students, need for communication. You will have to teach standard Arabic from time to time, but we need you to teach that one. And I will never forget that moment because I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about the grammar of my language, of my mother tongue. And it was tricky. How do we conjugate the verbs? Why do we use this negation particle? How about the past, the future, the conditionals? Oh my God. So I had to discover my own language. And this picture is probably from 1996 or 97 in one of my classes. I still look cute, yeah? If you know Arabic, you'll notice that the language on the board is Egyptian Arabic, and I can't even remember what the topic was, but it was about grammar of Egyptian Arabic. You will see that the cassette tape player that we used to use for listening activities in those days. Okay, so it was actually, although tricky to understand, to get to know my own language, it was such a joy to uncover that grammar, to discover it. There were very, very few books to describe the language. So it was great. And it was great to be able to pass this to students. But then this is what really sparked the academic inside me, the academic that I never knew would be part of my. I wanted to understand why do we have this dilemma? Why we have a standard and dialects? How come no one ever taught me the grammar of my own language? I wanted to really know what is working, what is not working. Similar to what Claire said, that is a time when you feel I need to study, I need to understand. So I did a postgraduate certificate in second language teaching, followed by the MA in applied linguistics, and that was the first time I heard the word diglossia. That was the first time I thought, like, wow, that is it. So that is the issue. Now I understand. When I came to the UK and I started teaching in higher education at the University of Manchester, the teaching was focusing on modern standard Arabic, which is what I expected at an academic level, but I still wanted to help my students more. So I thought, okay, I'll do the PhD. And for my PhD, I wanted it to go from my own practice to research, and I wanted that research to inform my practice again. And that's what I had as a question. Okay, so all these Arabic speakers managed to speak to each other with different dialects. How do they manage the communication? From what I read in literature, it suggested that the standard Arabic plays a big role here. Yeah, some of them saying it is the language that people, Arabs with different dialects, use when they communicate with each other, and or we borrowed some elements from standard Arabic. So I thought, okay, well, that's it. Our students learn the standard Arabic. I'm going to study this. I'm going to give them the exact linguistic elements that they can use. They can borrow from standard Arabic in order to communicate with any dialect speaker. So I was supervised by Melinda Wong as well. So she had really a big role to play in our journeys. And I recorded 11 conversations between 21 speakers of 12 Arabic dialects. It was beautiful to do that. And my task was to listen to the use of standard Arabic and analyze it. There were hardly any. That was the time when I thought, okay, no PhD. It's not working. It's just not working. And it was Melinda who told me, okay, let's take a step back. You wanted to think about how they speak and analyze the language they used, but you said that they spoke to each other mostly in their dialects, in their respective dialects. So how about changing the focus to how they understood each other if they spoke differently? And that was the task. So it would take a whole day to go through these in details. But what I can say is that Arabic speakers, regardless of where they come from, they have a lot of knowledge about each other's dialects. They know certain linguistic elements, and that helps them to understand each other. Mostly frequently used words. They know about the corresponding sounds in the dialects, but they also apply some interesting strategies of recognizing the roots of the words, pairing the cognates that they hear. They rely on the context, and sometimes they ignore unknown words. And of course, they ask for clarification. Okay, that is it. That's what I wanted to bring to our students. That is what I have been trying to bring to our students, so that they finish their studies feeling confident that they can use the language in different contexts with different people. I am not the only one. So these are just some of the other fighters, I would say, researchers that I had the pleasure to either work with or get to know and meet and read their work. Many of them are in the US, but I hope I have online today with me Melissa Towler, who's a research assistant, and Fawzia Saeed, an Arabic teacher in a school in London. And they are all trying to either research or implement this approach in teaching. Okay, so there was an unexpected turn again in my research when I started to focus on schools. So our children, especially here in the UK. And if you look at some of the statistics in the last few years, there is a noticeable increase in the number of heritage learners from Arab backgrounds, and Arabic speakers in general in the country are increasing in numbers. So we need to give attention to those. So a few years ago, first back in 2016 and again in 2023, I worked with Melissa on this topic, on the school teachers' views. I wanted to know how school teachers feel about bringing this diversity to class, telling the young children about the dialects, especially knowing that most of them are from Arab background. So they do come to class with a little bit of understanding of one or more dialects. And these were some of the comments that really I remember very well and got my attention. They are all a bit negative, but I want you to read them and then go back to that history that I shared with you. If someone says, why would anyone want to learn my dialect? It's useless. Yeah, they feel that their own dialect is useless because they've never studied it. Someone said, do you really call them Arabic? Do they even have grammar? Well, I didn't know that Egyptian Arabic had grammar until I had to teach it, so it's understandable. This is an interesting one when someone said, I have nothing against the dialects, yeah. They are beautiful and funny, and that word fun gets linked to the dialects quite often. But I need to teach my students the correct Arabic. And someone else said, this would be a waste of time because they can pick them up from their families and or from TV, yeah. So those dialects have that perception, reputation of being picked up. They can be picked up easily. Honestly, when I had to uncover the grammar of my language, that took me a lot of time. It was not easy to just pick up. I have to say that these may seem a bit negative, but actually the majority of the school teachers that we worked with, they appreciated that this is something important. And they shared with us some barriers that are very genuine. If you teach Arabic for GCSE and A-level exams, and if the exam orientation is focusing on one form, on the standard form, and if you don't have time, then how will you do this? How will you bring this to class? They know that there is a stigma towards dialects. They're worried that it will confuse the children. They felt they were not trained, and I really appreciate this. If they're not trained to teach their own mother tongues that they never learned, it is tricky. They were worried about parents, because it happens that when they bring the dialects in class, the parent may come and say, why you're not teaching my child the correct form of Arabic? And worried about some resources. So we worked together, and now still working with Fawzia, who's a teacher in a school in London, and developed this set of guidelines to help the teachers to actually try to implement this approach in class. Now, I know that time is actually going quite fast, but I have one example here that I'm very, very proud of. It's Finley, one of our students who last year did the Linguist Interschools module, and he implemented this class when he was given, as part of the practical aspect of his study, he was given 2 groups of primary school children to teach, and they happened to be some of them from Sudan, Egypt, and Syria. And he said, okay, that's it. And you did it. And this was from his presentation last year, and I remember he got very good marks for that. So well done. So really, really proud of seeing this actually making hopefully a difference. Now, finally, last thing, because we have some drinks upstairs. Throughout my career, I have taken some leadership roles that also I honestly didn't plan to take. I was encouraged to apply for the EDI role because I think at the time no one else went for it. But, then I took the role of director of the Center for Excellence in Language Teaching, and now I'm deputy head of school. So I'll tell you a little bit about each of these and how I found them linking to what I have been talking about this approach of teaching. So during my role as an EDI lead, we had this event, and Cecile, you were there when we had that first discussion back in 2021 about linguistic diversity and about accent bias. And we started with a small survey, and then this grew and became a bigger survey. And now probably many of you are familiar with our university statement on an accent bias. And Leeds as a university is really leading in this across the country. That was the time when I felt that EDI and bringing linguistic diversity to class are so linked. Yeah, we can't reach about accent bias if we're not actually teaching our students about the variation that is there, normalizing that variation, helping them to know that all these are just different, but all equally important. When I took the role of Director of Center of Excellence in Language Teaching, I realized that I'm not the only one. So, okay, so I've been speaking about Arabic for a while, but I am not the only one, and Arabic is not the only language. I have amazing colleagues here that I worked with who implements this approach to the teaching of German, Spanish, Portuguese, Mandarin, many of the languages that we have in LCS, and we are again leading in this, which is beautiful to see. And also that includes Yorkshire accents, by the way. Now, deputy head of school, I had to think really hard about this one, because since I took that role, it sometimes feels so removed from my teaching and my research. And most of what we do as deputy heads is about this. But actually, if you think about it, it's again about priorities. It's about student satisfaction. It's about excelling. It's about reputation. It's about sustainability, growing. And if we are really trying to diversify the content of what we teach, then we are aiming to achieve all of this. Where is the next stop? The next stop is upstairs to have some drinks. But I honestly don't know. It would be probably something unexpected as well. I would just continue to advocate for this approach and support others who are interested in implementing it. Just before we finish, can I share a list of thanks, please? Just bear with me. That was in the script that I didn't look at. Okay. So first and foremost, grateful to Allah, my God, who I sincerely believe allowed me to achieve so many things in my life. I'm grateful to my parents and my siblings. Grateful to my husband, Najib, for his love, support, and patience sometimes. And to our sons, Yusuf, Ismail, and Haroon, for bringing joy when it is most needed. My thanks to Claire for delivering this lecture with me. Friends and colleagues in LCS and the Language Center, there are about 200 plus of them. So it's very difficult to mention all the names. And I can see some faces here, and I know some of you are online. And honestly, I don't know how to thank you all. It's been a pleasure working with you. You inspire me a lot. Your messages in the last few days before this lecture were really heartfelt and just amazing. So thank you so much. I'm still going. I want to thank some leaders that really inspired me in my journey. Emma Cayley, who is makes you feel like she's a friend that you've known for a long time. And I know she has a lot on her shoulder. She's leading a big school, and it's been a pleasure really working with you. Kate Nash, who is not with us, she used to be working with us, but she was the pro dean, and she was such a brilliant leader. Hendrik Kretschmar and Fozea Bora. Thank you so much for letting me witness how you lead. I would like to thank many trainers and mentors that I've had throughout the years who supported me. My supervisor, Professor Melinda Wong. Grateful to colleagues who read and supported my promotion application, which was really long. So thanks to Becky, Murada Taylor, Helen Finch, Hanim Al-Farahati, B. Bond, Nina Waterworth, and Emma Cayley again. I want to thank my promotion referees, Professor Zainab Taha from the American University in Cairo, Professor Mahmoud Al-Batal, Texas University, Professor Victoria Aguilar, University of Murcia, Dr. Karine Alef from Qatar Foundation International, Mark Critchley, who was the he is ex-chair of the AULC, and Professor Ed Welch from Durham University. The promotion panel was brilliant. Professor Aisha Divan, Professor Matthew Treherne, Kelly Lewis, and Emma Cayley again. And huge thanks to all the school teachers that I collaborated with, Qatar Foundation International for sponsoring the research that I did. And last but not least, huge thanks to the many students that I taught. You made this unexpected journey meaningful, joyful, and exciting. Thank you all so much.
Claire, would you like to come up? So both of our speakers have given really rich and wonderful talks today, and I think a lot of connections between the two. That kind of connectedness and communication is a kind of golden thread running through both of the lectures that we've heard this evening. So I think we won't have questions, but please feel free to ask questions over some refreshments. You're all very welcome to come and have refreshments. Please do stay around. But for now, can we just thank our two speakers really warmly?